Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Promised Land, a show about Manchester United and part of the 90 Min podcast network. I am, as ever, Scott Saunders, joined by Rob Blanchette, as ever, talking all things Manchester United, as ever. And we're going to talk about strikers today because there's a lot of talk going around about Manchester United's potential January acquisition and some targets for the summer as well. Rob, how are you?
Very well. It's a bit of a dark and gloomy day today. We always seem to start the show on like what the weather's like. Normally I have the sun screaming down on me, don't we, in the summer when we're doing the show, but it's absolutely pitch black and dark. It feels like it's about 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it is. It's nearly 10 a.m. So this is, if you're watching on YouTube, pretty grim. It's raining in London. It's not great at all. Very cold and windy. Anyway, we're not here to talk about weather. Subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. That's a lovely. I don't know what am I doing? That was not a nice little lead in there. Subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, and the likes, and watch us twice a week. Tuesdays and Fridays. I think we should be back to normal now. Head over to YouTube. Our channel is the Promised Land and Manchester United podcast. Hit the like button, subscribe, join the community, and leave a comment for us as well. And the link should be in the description of this episode if you're listening on an audio platform. And follow us on Twitter @_ Scott Saunders, @_ Rob _B, and @PromiseLandMU for the show. Today, we'll be talking all about how Man United fix their long-term number 9 problem, because Anthony Martial is probably the only option they really have on the books at the moment. Marcus Rashford's been filling in. Bruno Fernandes can play there, but he would be in the false 9 role, and that's not the optimal approach. Ten Hag does like to work with a proper striker who can press from the front, etc., etc. How do they fix that problem, and what is Erik Ten Hag's approach to it going to be? That's what we will talk about. We'll talk about Wout Weghorst as well, because that is the man on everybody's lips at the moment. Talk of a potential loan move to Old Trafford for the Dutchman in January. We'll also talk about the João Felix option, which seems to have gone because Chelsea are signing every player in the world. We'll talk Victor Osimhen, Harry Kane, and Benjamin Sesko, who this week it's been confirmed by other media that United are looking at. I mean, reported this a number of months ago as well on a bunch of these players. I know we've been speaking the Harry Kane interest into existence over the last few weeks as well, and it seems to have manifested. Makes a lot of sense to me. We'll talk about which option is potentially best down the line, and we'll talk a little bit about some other things as well, wage capping story from the other day, etc., etc. But Rob, let's get started with what is Erik Ten Hag's plan for centre forward? From let's say he's here. Let's say hopefully he's here for as long as it's successful, right? But let's say he's here for 5 years, right? 5 seasons. What is his plan from now until the end of that 5 years?
Well, strikers are shiny and they excite. So people like to talk about them. So that's one of the reasons why we're talking about them. But of course, there is a pressing need at Manchester United. That wasn't a pun using the word pressing, but I'll come back to that. Where are Man United at the moment? You just talk about their kind of like 5-year plan. Now, of course, with the sale of the football club, it's kind of difficult to talk about long-term ambition in who you're going to get. But there is a part of the story there that we'll come to at the end of this segment in terms of what Man United will do probably next summer and what we're hearing. But at the moment, as you just said there, and I kind of laughed inside, the name Wout Weghorst is on everyone's lips. And that is not a headline I was writing last week. Not at all. So it's not kind of sad, but Man United fans are a bit like, oh, this is kind of not what we signed up for, is it? But this is actually the kind of striker that the manager likes. So like you just said there, he likes to work with a big man. I think the trade-off is that he wants players who can play in the half space on the left and the right, but they need to be able to counter press and play the 9. So he kind of wants all his cake and he wants to eat all of it, doesn't he, Scott? So what can he get us on the market now? There's lots of names, we're going to talk about João Felix in a minute as well. But who can do that best? Well, one of the most elite strikers in Europe in terms of the press and assists and helping in that function is Weghorst, surprisingly enough. Hence why he was in Louis van Gaal's team at the World Cup. So not the most spectacular name, I don't know, but we'll discuss him today because we look like that deal is going to get done. Besiktas is digging their heels in, but effectively the player has said he wants to go and he's desperate to come back to Northwest and start fresh with Man United for 6 months and then maybe earn himself a permanent contract into next season.
So you mentioned the Besiktas are being digging their heels in a little bit. They have put a statement out, and just to catch you up on the situation, Weghorst played for Burnley last season, was signed. Burnley were relegated. Weghorst then left on loan. Besiktas have an option to buy him at the end of the season, doing quite well. I think he scored a few goals and scored at the weekend as well. Besiktas obviously have him under contract at the moment on loan and would, the way it's going, probably looking to take up their option in the summer. However, Man United have some interest there and are looking to facilitate the termination of that loan so they can take him. Essentially, that's it. Besiktas, obviously, knowing that they're in a powerful position, want to be compensated. And they put out a statement earlier this week saying, after the match of our football A team against Kasımpaşa in the Super League, there was a need to make a statement due to speculative news about our football player, Wout Weghorst. The claim that there is an exit clause in our football player's contract stating that his contract can be terminated with a compensation of 2.5 million euros in case of an offer from the Premier League is fictitious. A lot of speculation jumping around, but if Besiktas weren't open to this at all, there would be no negotiation at all. So I think United want this one to be wrapped up pretty soon because they've got some big matches coming up. They would like that extra striker option. And for me, I think this one gets done pretty quickly. I would say even United would think that they can probably wrap this one up this week. Will not be obviously ready for the Charlton game, but I think he needs to be ready and registered in the Premier League by Friday midday if he's to play in the Manchester derby against Man City. That would be quite funny, wouldn't it, Rob, if he comes off the bench on Saturday and scores the winner against Man City after all of the kind of derision he's received. But it does make a lot of sense to me. Yeah, you look at the Odion Ighalo transfer a few years ago. That was desperation. This kind of reads a desperation, but at least there's thought process behind it. And obviously they're not going to sign Victor Osimhen, Harry Kane, Benjamin Sesko, any other like big name striker for a lot of money this month. So this makes a lot of sense. Why does it make sense?
It makes tons of sense because it's exactly what the manager needs and wants. So yeah, like this is the whole point about where we are with the sale of the club. It keeps reverberating, going around in circles back to that. Is that you're trying to protect your wage structure as it stands. You don't want to add another big wage after losing Cristiano's, taking that $500,000 off the books. You don't want to put it back on. And Weghorst is a super budget signing. The guy's on really pittance. It's like £60,000-70,000 a week. So Manchester United are not really going to have to give him a huge pay rise to tempt him to come to Old Trafford, are they? It's a good opportunity for him. I also think that it's good to bring in players at this moment on loan who are absolutely motivated to do well, and maybe not a loan signing, who is just motivated to collect the wage for 6 months and then maybe go back to his club, João Felix, someone like that. So there's that logic there about Man United hunting through the marketplace to find a really good fit. And I think the thing is with Weghorst is that he will give you the energy at number 9 that you haven't really got at the moment. Totally the opposite Cristiano. So Cristiano might be the goal scorer and the hero and the icon. This is the grafter. This is the guy who's going to come in and give you elite pressing stats. Who's going to help you counter press. Who's going to help his teammates. That's why you're signing him. Now, a lot of people will be saying to us, this is a little bit glass half full, glass half empty. Not really. I think like you, I think it's quite logical. I think when you look at what you need, you're only looking for a bench piece, aren't you? Because that's what you lost with Cristiano. Cristiano was a bench player. Let's be honest. He wasn't going to be a starter long term. So you're looking for someone in the next 6 months who will sit on the bench. That is not João Felix. He wouldn't come to you to sit on the bench. He would demand to be a starter. Weghorst will come in, be selfless, and he will help others. And he's also known as a bit of a dressing room mentality monster, Scott. He's known for being someone that gets in with his teammates and demands, gets in there and says, no, we're not going to just jog around this week. We're going to work hard, and it starts with me. I like that. I like that kind of guy. And I think that's the kind of player that we need in the short term.
Yeah, there's some suggestions. I'm not really sure where they're from. Maybe from fans of other clubs. I know I've had conversations about this, that he's going to come in as first choice striker.
No.
Which, I mean, like, if I'm wrong, feel free to come at me, but I don't think that is what is being explored here. This is more of a different option off the bench. Ronaldo with energy, you know. This is a better option for United squad than Ronaldo is.
Yeah, look, some of the nationals were running yesterday. Will Weghorst get the number 7? What are you talking about? Like this is not what that signing is. You're not saying to Weghorst, you've won the lottery, and you're our new number 7, and it's what we want you to be. You're going to replace Cristiano. I do think that in Ten Hag's system, and I keep going back to that tactical, like morphed idea about what a Ten Hag system is that you must buy players that fit that system. It's no good just signing someone that scores lots of goals. You've got to have the balance. And like you said there, like Anthony Martial is the number 9. And if Anthony Martial stays fit, he will be the starting number 9 for the whole season. That's just what it is. But if you get to a game where it's tricky and you need someone to do a little bit more, and you need some more energy, and you might need a little bit of height defending corners and on set pieces, and you need someone who's technically able, Weghorst for 20 minutes off the bench is like absolutely ideal, isn't it? You know,
you saw it at the World Cup, Rob.
Yeah, exactly. You saw it at the World Cup, and it's kind of like Cavani light. You know, like you knew with Cavani when you stuck him on. Yeah, he's a formerly elite striker. You know, people love him, his game, how he plays. But he brings energy and he brings motivation, brings all sorts of these intangibles, doesn't he? Weghorst kind of brings that in a different way. And his stats, like the stats don't lie. I always say that as a journalist. I always go, look at the stats, and then what you think has to correlate to what actually happens on the numbers book. Like, do those things, perception, does it count with the stats? And you can see there's a lot of United fans and people in football who don't actually know what Weghorst does, because they're kind of like, oh, he's a big lump up top, new Peter Crouch, because he's like over 6'4", you know, pushing 6'6". No, he's actually a technical footballer. I got a quote here that I'm going to put out today that came originally from Ralf Rangnick. And Ralf Rangnick was talking about Weghorst, and he kind of talked about his past in the Bundesliga. And he was like, for some reason, people who don't know Weghorst think that he's like a big aerial threat, and he can be. He was like, but he's actually a technical player and is nowhere near being the aerial threat that people think. He plays the ball on the deck. That comes from Mr. Gegenpress himself. Do you know what I mean? Talking about this player. And this is why he was in Van Gaal's squad. Louis Van Gaal absolutely loves him because he's an energy guy and he gives you those stats, he gives you those things that managers desperately want. So I think the big thing is about Weghorst, Scott, is that under Sean Dyche at Burnley, Dyche was absolutely the worst possible manager he could have had, because Dyche would have gone, "You're 6'6", lad, are you? Oh, I know what we're going to do," you know. And unfortunately, that was the downfall of Dyche in the end, wasn't it? With that end of that Burnley project, that's kind of Burnley's owners wanted to go a different way, and Dyche wanted to play the same football. I think Weghorst suffered for that. That's why he's having quite a good season at Besiktas, and I think they'll come to Man United. And whatever you deem as success, I think he will be more as a surprise element at Man United and be able to do stuff. I think he'll become quite a bit of a fan favourite.
I think so too. We'll see. I think United are looking at, I've read, and the suggestions are to me that United would like to have no commitment beyond the end of this season for any kind of short-term target. That's not to say that there won't be an option in this deal to trigger it, especially if it's a cheap one. But it does seem as though United are looking at a higher profile striker in the summer, and whether Weghorst stays in as a third choice striker at the start of next season, if they can pick him up for a few million quid, remains to be seen. But I think United want a clean slate, I think, is the way that we've looked at it, especially if there's new ownership, especially if there is players who are going to be going out the door. And Erik Ten Hag is looking to build his team. And I think just for 6 months or so, for what he adds to the team, he's like you say, Rob, he's 6'6", but he's more than just an aerial threat. He's also an aerial threat, which United don't really have, from set pieces, from crosses. You've seen Anthony and Bruno Fernandes and Luke Shaw and all these players who can actually cross the ball nowadays. Casemiro seems to have been the only one really who has any knack of putting them away. So this is another thing. You get into, let's say it's 1-1 in a game and you want a different option for the next 20 minutes and you have a set piece. Well, that's immediately more of a threat than, let's say, Anthony Martial is. I think there's a lot of pluses to this. obviously the default thought process is Wout Weghorst, Man United are finished, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And again, the irony around the bigger story with the player is that, as I just mentioned, the Dyche era and why it kind of failed for him. And he supposedly kind of fell out with the management at Burnley around that period in terms of that he wanted to play more football, on the deck. He wanted kind of more, to be put in and to kind of work and to kind of be in a press. And he wasn't being used like that. And he kind of made it quite known to Burnley at that time that it wasn't working for him and each other. That's kind of why I think his numbers were so poor there. It was like the end of it. However, we have heard that Vincent Kompany really likes him. So Vincent Kompany's like Burnley top flight team next year. They were not happy that they had this deal on the table where they were going to lose the player for around 10.5 million to Besiktas, because I think Besiktas would have triggered that. He's done really well there. He's really popular. He's done a good job. But Burnley might like the option of recalling him. And if they can do that with Man United, where they have a 6 months loan, rip up that deal with Besiktas because they don't want to move the player on, I would not be surprised that if he does well at Man United, that Burnley are then going, well, we want him back, or he's 20 million now because he's an international footballer and he's done really well in your system. He's proved he's a Premier League footballer.
Well, I think it's more, Burnley are top of the Championship and top two positions are automatic, right? And then there's a playoff. Yeah. They are 14 points ahead of third place.
And they're coming up. But Burnley are a really good team. Like we saw them obviously against us. We know what they are. And I think Vincent Kompany is a progressive manager. He's building something really good at Burnley. They are the opposite of the Sean Dyche Burnley now. They're a team who have aspirations in a kind of what I would say Wolves sense. Like when Wolves were coming up, and it's that kind of team of where you're a traditionally old historic football club, but you've got new ways and means. Kompany looks at, I think, a player like Weghorst and thinks, yeah, you could work in my attack in rotation. I'm sure they would love him back. So I think this is the bigger story of it. Weghorst himself, he does well at Old Trafford and Man United want him. Of course, I think he would want to stay at Manchester United. So there is that. Whether he'd want to go back to Burnley or not, I don't know. But Burnley are a Premier League team next year, Scott, and they surely will be. Players will be attracted to them, not just because of Kompany, but because of the style of play. They are a really, really good team. And I think Weghorst now suits that version of Burnley than he ever did the previous incarnation.
Let us know if you think Wout Weghorst is a good signing for Manchester United on the conditions of a 6-month loan with either an option to buy or no option to buy, and United move on into acquiring a striker that we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. Let us know on Twitter @_Scott Saunders, @_Rob_B, @PromiselandMU, and leave a comment for us as well on this video. If you're not, if you're only listening on audio, you can subscribe on YouTube as well. So give us a search. The João Felix option, though, is gone by the looks of it, because Chelsea are mopping up every single player that exists. Do we have to worry that they'll go and sign Wout Weghorst from under United's noses? Are they going to sign Victor Osimhen, Harry Kane, and Benjamin Sesko in one transfer window? We will have to wait and see, won't we? João Felix, it seems Chelsea have bitten, and there's no buy option in this deal for João Felix. So they are paying exactly what, or close to what, Atletico Madrid wanted and what Man United and Arsenal turned their noses up at.
Yep.
Crazy.
Basically, it's mad. Sorry, I thought you were saying you were going to add some more there too. Let's
just leave the silence there, Rob, to just think about how mad it is.
The hay bales again going across the screen, looking at it. It's the numbers that they're putting up with it. Again, there's a little bit more to the story here. So Diego Simeone is probably going to leave the football club. We know this at the end of the season. It's got to that point where he also would like to come to the Premier League or kind of try something new. I think you'll probably see this player return to Atletico Madrid and be an important piece for them going forward. He's still on a massive wage there. But Chelsea are kind of just giving him a holiday in London. So we did know, this is where the Arsenal side of it came in, is that Arsenal didn't want to be the holiday destination. They wanted someone that could help them. And João Felix, of course, is a very good footballer. You've talked about him in glowing terms, Scott. I know you like him.
I like him. I do, yeah.
He's a good player. He's a good player. But having a load of good players doesn't mean you've got a good team. Man United have done that for 10 years. Plenty of good players, plenty of talent, rubbish team. And I think when you're looking at Chelsea now, they've got a good coach. But he can't knit this together, because it's a long, long project. And all these players that they're bringing in, actually, I don't think helps him. doesn't help trying to integrate more talent, more talent, more talent. What happens? You're not playing well. You're not where you are. You're 10th. You know, Sterling gets injury. Just buy another striker, another player, another player, another player. No, you actually need smaller numbers to work with and progress and move them on. So this is why I'm not too low on Man United not trying to buy everyone, because we've tried to do that in the past. And Chelsea's project now kind of mirrors a little bit what the Glazers have done at Man United.
Absolutely does. This is the one thing that I've looked at and noticed with this Chelsea project. Give him Badiashile, who was linked with Man United a couple of years ago for like 80 million quid or however much it was. Yeah. A 7-year contract.
Yeah.
He's early 20s, you know, so that takes him right through. Chelsea are saying themselves, and this isn't a Chelsea podcast, but I'm just looking at, like, I've seen probably each of their last 5 managers or assistant managers. There was a tweet that went around about how this squad lacks motivation. And then you go and give an relatively unproven defender who's played for Monaco for a few years, a 7-year contract with a guaranteed wage. You look at Enzo Fernandez, who I know the pursuit is over, but you look at Enzo Fernandez, who moved 6 months ago to Europe for like 40 million euros. Yeah. And he has a release clause of 120, and you indicate that you'd like to go and trigger it just at like a few weeks after he's won the World Cup. What does that do for motivation? If you're going to throw in money around like that at young players who've just a guy who's won the World Cup, he could think his career's done. I don't know the guy. I rate the player, but for me, it's not the right approach. I mean, I look at players like Datro Fofana and Chukwuemeka, those kind of players. I agree with those signings. I think they're good acquisitions. Andre Santos as well, but it's all over the place.
Well, you look at Fofana from Leicester, you look at that deal and what they paid and the premium they paid on that for a player who's got an absolutely horrible injury record. All right, it might have a lot of potential going forward. Like, you know, we talk about development projects, but they paid a lot of money for a player that can't really help them this year and might not be able to help them going forward, not every week. Do you know what I mean? So I think when you look at that Chelsea project, it's so skewed, and the new owners there are playing like a video game of signings of like, he's good. And of course, some will land and some will be good and we'll go, oh, that was a good signing. And then other players will come and you'll think, what are they actually doing? What's the philosophy here? They've got a coach now who's a philosophy monster and has been known for identifying players in the market who maybe are not traditionally big names and bringing them into his team. But the vital point here is that's taken years to develop, years at Brighton. Now, they've just got to nick Brighton's director of football as well, haven't they, and brought them to the football club for recruitment. So they've got an idea upstairs of what they want to do, but they just seem to be going out and just splashing the cash and kind of doing this, like what I would call Glazer power play. You know, where Glazers would just spend 200 million like that. And we've done our jobs. Well, you haven't. You've done no recruitment. You've just signed players and given them big wages. So, this is not a Chelsea podcast, but vitally, they are one of our contenders for top 4. So we will talk about these clubs around there because it's interesting about how you compare these things. And I think that Ten Hag's got the right ideas, that we don't need to go and do that. We don't need to go and buy every player. Go and buy the right player. I know it sounds easy on paper and it isn't, but that's the philosophy you should have. And Man United, I think, have got a bit more of a methodical approach now in that, is that they won't overpay. And they should never have paid that money for João Felix. I'm quite happy they didn't, because I don't think João Felix gives you a better opportunity of getting top 4 for the money that you're taking on for him. He's just a shirt seller, Scott. João Felix would sell tons of shirts at Man United. I don't want players that do that. I want the right players coming in. So I'd rather get a budget version like Weghorst and see what happens. And then in the summer, go and find that marquee striker that you really need maybe to take you to the next level. You might be pleasantly surprised by some of the kind of, what I would say, co-stars in the team who are not really the most popular names, but they might be the ones that get you top 4 at the end of the day.
Talk about those strikers in a little bit. I just wanted to finish off on Chelsea, though. Like, we're talking about it does remind me of the Glazers. And there's so many players coming in. How does Graham Potter, I'm sure Graham Potter he might get told that these players are coming in, but how can he go and like build a team with the sheer volume of players that the squad was massive anyway?
Totally. And we were told when he went to Chelsea that he would be massively involved in the recruitment cycle, that was going to be a thing. These moves in the last few weeks absolutely prove he's not involved. It's being run from upstairs because he's being given players. And even when he's doing his pressers after, he's talking like that. He's kind of going, well, got a load of injuries and we've got these, we will have signings, I believe, and all. And it's a bit like, oh, yeah, really, like you will have signings, you believe, like you're going to get players, you just don't know if it's players you want. So I think maybe longer term Chelsea will slow it down and they'll get there. But will the manager survive that period of time? Like I think that Luis Enrique's name is potentially already on the list at Stamford Bridge, and that could be something that happens sooner rather than later. And do Chelsea just run out of time on Potter? Like I think they'd like to keep Potter because he is the chairman's man, but it doesn't take very long to lose face. If you lose football matches over and over and over and over again, you very quickly become David Moyes at Man United. You're the next big manager, 6-year contract, grassroots manager. That's what you want. Sacked in 11 months. That could very much happen to Graham Potter. And wouldn't it be sad for him to lose that job at Brighton, do Chelsea, get sacked at Chelsea, and have to slip back down the order to find another job?
Let's stop talking about Chelsea and let's talk about...
Enough Chelsea.
Let's talk about Man United. I'm sure Chelsea will be after Harry Kane or Benjamin Sesko if they're going to move anywhere, or even Victor Osimhen. But we'll talk about these now. I said earlier, we reported at 90 Min months ago that United were, and we did it on this podcast as well, I think that United were looking at potentially giving RB Leipzig a little bit more money than they're outlaying to buy from their sister club, Benjamin Sesko. He's going to move to Leipzig in the summer as it stands, although I think that's for a cut price, 20 million euros, something around that. If they can double their money, flip him quite quick to a club like Man United or somebody else, I'm sure that makes good business sense for everyone. I think even a 40 million euro player for Man United isn't too much of a risk nowadays. But it's a big price. One of the most highly rated young players in the world, or in Europe. Let's say in Europe. He's looking all right. He's got a few goals this season, but obviously the two that are sticking out have been circulating are Victor Osimhen from Napoli and Harry Kane of Tottenham. Harry Kane linked with Man United a ton of times across the course of his career. And a big shout out as well, actually, to another former Tottenham player who has been linked with Man United many, many times before, who retired yesterday, Gareth Bale. What a career. Absolute legend. I would have loved to have seen him at Old Trafford at some point, even if it was now, to be honest, just because
Thank God we didn't take him on loan. That's all I'm saying. When it was offered to them and it was all there and Man United said no, I was like, thank God. Gareth Bale, great player. I know you love him, Scott, fellow Welshman. I know he's an icon and a god for you, but ultimately, oh my God, that was a classic one where United could have pulled the trigger on that because they were asking, and they were asking a lot. They were kind of going, this could be the answer to it. Can you imagine? It would have been like another Ronaldo. It would have been, oh, Gareth Bale spotted on a golf course somewhere in Cheshire. Why are you not at training? I don't want that. I know you love him, and he has been an icon. Like, the debate about, is he the greatest British footballer of all time? Sorry, Scott, no, he isn't. Like, George Best, Bobby Charlton for starters. You got that as a British footballers. But yeah, he's been great. And I think he's one of those players that he'll be remembered for the great stuff as time goes along. At the moment, it's people still kind of mention him in a dour tone sometimes. But what a player, he's really, what he did at Real Madrid as Ronaldo light was really good. He never really quite replaced Ronaldo, did he? That was what he was bought for. But my God, he scored some good goals and won some trophies.
He also took a country of 3 million people to heights they would never dream of course. It's not England, is it? Anyway, let's talk about Victor Osimhen and Harry Kane and Benjamin Sesko. So, 3 players potentially targeted in the summer. Let's say, right, Wout Weghorst signs 6 months, comes in, scores 5 goals, good option off the bench. United get top 4. I think that's the ideal scenario. Win a trophy as well. Great. I think that would be absolutely fantastic for a first season for Erik Ten Hag, especially after the way it started.
Yeah.
Then United in the summer look at the holes that they have in their squad. So I think we'll agree, Rob. Right back probably needs addressing. The goalkeeper needs to be addressed, whichever way they do it. Central midfield is still an issue. Right centre back is probably an issue, but I think that one can be put off. Maybe until the summer after. Right wing, potentially. And then centre forward. I think centre forward and central midfield for me are the 2 standout summer transfer window moves that I think they should make with right back alongside it. If I had to pick 3 positions, it would probably be those at the moment as it stands. So striker obviously looks to be a position that Ten Hag knows he needs to upgrade in. Anthony Martial is injured quite a bit. He's not really doing it at the moment. Let's see if he can answer the critics. He has plenty of them. Who would you pick, Rob?
Well, look, a lot of this is going to be decided over the next few months about how the story and the script of Manchester United plays out towards the end of the season, isn't it? Whether you get top 4 or not, it's going to dictate so much in terms of what you can go and get. Because what is vital is that if you want a big name striker, you're going to have to be in the Champions League. You have to be. So, because not just because the player wants to play in the Champions League, but that generates the cash and the revenues for you to go and get the player that you want. So there is a connection there. It doesn't mean that you can't get players, but it's the player that you want if you want a marquee signing. So who do you go and get out of those 3? If you can assume that, say, Anthony Martial has a decent season and wants to stay, and I think that is the case, the manager likes him, he likes the manager, can see him staying. Marcus is going to get a new contract. We know that. That's the way that's going to go. We think that Elanga will probably be shown the door, might be sooner rather than later in terms of a loan deal and then maybe out full time. So say Weghorst comes in and does exactly what he says on the tin, in terms of his numbers and stats, just what he does. I think you could see him maybe staying as well. So that would be 3 strikers, 3 players that you can play through the middle. So if you go on the philosophy that most managers do want 4 for the 9 position to be able to do different things, who do you go and sign? Well, you and me deliberately have said we were not going to talk about Harry Kane for a few weeks. So we've known a little bit about this going back over time before the World Cup. But we were like, we'll save it because we want to kind of see where it goes.
It's actually earlier, though, than I thought.
It is earlier. I was about to say, I thought we were going to kind of talk about this maybe when United had a bit more of a striking crisis. So the next time Martial pulls his hamstring, it'll be like, who United going to sign in 6 months? But we're kind of already there, aren't we? We know that United do want a striker and want a striker that can do different things. So the 2 big names, I don't want to talk too much about Sesko because I think Sesko is still your development project. Really good player, young, would totally fit that if you're going to buy him for around 40 million, around that mark, that you could bring him in as a rotation piece. And at 19, 20, he might be okay with playing less games in the short term to become your full-time striker, get the opportunity. No problem. That would be a no-brainer if you could get him for 40 million. But when you look at Kane and Osimhen, and I put this out yesterday where I did a little stats piece on Twitter about them and kind of said, when you look at the stats, Harry Kane is absolutely more suited to the Ten Hag system than Osimhen. And straight away people went, oh, how can you say that? That's rubbish. That's rubbish. But what I mean is this, is that you need a player that can play in half spaces, but is absolutely effective when he drops deep in the counter press. So when he gets the ball,
he's been doing it for years at Tottenham. Marcus Rashford and Harry Kane. Goodness me.
The thing about Weghorst, and this is what Weghorst is good at, and then this is what you'd be expanding on with Harry Kane, is that if a player drops from 9 to 10 into the gap and you're in a counter press and you rob the ball back, you need a striker that can play that assist in. Yeah. Now, Osimhen isn't that player. Mm-hmm. Osimhen is brilliant, and Osimhen could become the best striker in the world. I absolutely think that. And I'm not saying Man United should not explore signing Osimhen, but come on, he's doing brilliantly in Napoli. It's going to cost you a fortune one way or the other. So these 2 players, I don't think price really matters. I actually think Harry Kane will probably cost more in some ways.
I think Osimhen will cost more. I've got to be honest.
When we come to the summer, exactly. When we come to the summer, Osimhen might be the best striker in the world and your Haaland, equivalent across Europe and across the world. And you might be paying that money for him, like big money to get him out of Napoli. And you might be looking at Harry Kane at a dysfunctional Tottenham Hotspur, might have sacked their manager by then, might not have had a good season. And Harry Kane wants to move from Tottenham if Tottenham cannot deliver success. So that's the bottom line. But that's Kane might force his way out in that way. We know that Harry Kane, if he gets the project he wants, he is off. He's going to be out the door. So in that time of the 6 months, Scott, United have to build their project to look appealing to these top players. And what we're kind of hearing from agents and people around Europe and football is that people like it. People are looking at United and going, Glazers out the door, new owners in. And we'll talk a little bit about ownership at the end because there's a little bit I want to kind of add on that. And if you can do that around Ten Hag and have a strong manager and a strong dressing room and you come top 4, Job done. You're there. You're at that point where you can attract the talent you want. Harry Kane's metrics are like crystal clear built for a Ten Hag team in that, yeah, he scores loads of goals, but he doesn't actually need loads of chances to score those goals. And he assists, like his assist rate is absolutely crazy in terms of helping others around him. And he'll press without a lot of hard work. Like he's not like Weghorst, he doesn't run loads, but he's positioned perfectly. He's always in the right position. And Ten Hag loves that. Someone who's economical with their strength and their speed and their pace. And you know that with someone like with Harry Kane, how many goals he scored in the Premier League? Almost 200, something like that. You know what you get in a player that knows how to score against every team in the Premier League. Now, Osimhen could give you all of that, but with Osimhen, there are different questions, and you would have to stylistically change a little bit of what you're doing now. If you're being successful doing this, Scott, under Ten Hag, will Ten Hag want to do something different for a different kind of number 9? No, and that's why he's bringing Weghorst in, because Weghorst is your kind of Sebastian Haller light. That's what he took him at Ajax and did amazing things with that player. Player was completely unfashionable and, you know, out of everyone's mind of being an option. So that's where we are now. And I think going forward, I think Harry Kane will be the prime target.
Let me talk about, so I'll compare Osimhen and Kane. If Tottenham don't get top 4, I think Harry Kane, with a year left on his contract, if he was to sign a new deal, that is Harry Kane's career done. That is Harry Kane deciding, I'm staying at Tottenham. I'm going to do. Bayern Munich will probably have had interest, but I think I know from information that Harry Kane wants to become the Premier League's all-time top scorer. Yeah. I don't think that's. I don't know if you'll be able to find many people who will say that that doesn't really matter to him. I think that will probably play a big part in any decision he makes. He has 1 year left on his contract as it stands in a Tottenham project that is either going to fall flat on its face and completely restart in the summer, or is just going to, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be title contention. I don't think the way that Daniel Levy is going to try and spend money under Antonio Conte, even if he stays, it doesn't make sense to me. I think you got a ceiling on it. United have the new ownership thing. Harry Kane has a year left on his contract. This, I would guess, 80, 70 million. Victor Osimhen, if he wins the league with Napoli, is your £100 million player, possibly more than that. That would be United's record signing. I think you could probably get Harry Kane for somewhere around the current figure. This is me guessing, but I just thinking logically, Tottenham's negotiation position with a year left on his deal is not going to be great. Otherwise, he walks away for free in a year. Victor Osimhen, then, it costs more than Harry Kane. Yes, he has a longer term value. However, he comes in with this price tag on his head, and United have been doing this for years. This price tag on his head, untried in the Premier League. I'm not saying that he won't work, but that is a hell of a lot of pressure for anyone to contend with. And while I'm not saying I wouldn't take Victor Osimhen if that's the way that United decide to go, I'm sure it would be great. But Harry Kane makes too much sense to me. And there's people who are saying, oh, he's a bottler. He doesn't have the right mentality for it. He missed a penalty for England. Have you seen his penalty record across his career? Like, that can happen to anyone. Bruno Fernandes missed penalties. Ronaldo missed a penalty in the Champions League final in 2008. Yeah. Look where he's gone on to do. And Harry Kane also, if Tottenham didn't have Harry Kane, would Tottenham be Tottenham? Absolutely not. I think Harry Kane makes so much sense that there's a Rashford, a Son and Kane partnership, that kind of dropping in deep, playing someone in behind. Marcus Rashford can fill that gap easily. You might have to work on how he works with Bruno Fernandes, but I'm sure Bruno Fernandes would love the opportunity to work with Harry Kane. It just makes too much sense to me. He's a guaranteed 20 goals a season in the Premier League. And this really gives United an added threat up front. And I think this is the absolute optimal one. And Harry Kane, just one more thing. 29, 30 years old. People saying, oh, well, by 33, he's going to be finished. Do you understand how intelligent Harry Kane is? Do you understand like those types of players and how knowing mentally what position to occupy on the pitch and knowing how to operate, especially with the injuries he's had, he's going to try and protect himself. I reckon Harry Kane could go until he's 36, 37, personally.
Totally. And I think the thing is, Harry Kane has had injury problems over the years, but there is definitely a trend towards that he's kind of sorted a lot of those things out. like some of those kind of more repetitive injuries that he used to get. And I do think, again, it talks to loads about what's around you. At Tottenham, he is Tottenham. There is no doubt about it. If you don't have Harry Kane at Tottenham are not a top 6 club, probably. They are going to be flirting well away from the Champions League places. So getting Harry Kane on one stand actually hurts one of your nearest competitors. That's a big thing about it. But I think the other side of the coin is that Harry Kane will come to Man United and make players around him better. So Osimhen might come to your team and score all the goals. But like I said about Ronaldo last year, and there is a kind of premise that matches here. You don't want a striker that gets you 40 and you come 6th. It's no point. You need a player who is going to get you 15, 20, 25, but also get you 15 assists and help those around you. So those things become really important, especially a manager like Ten Hag. So this isn't about just talking up Harry Kane. I'm not saying I'm not a fan of Harry Kane or I am a fan of Harry Kane. I'm looking at this purely from metrics and from fit and the player himself. Harry Kane is not a bottler. He's been England captain for ages. He's been the kind of figurehead of that international team for such a long time. And he's done the job, hasn't he? He's got the goals and he's proved at Tottenham that when Tottenham have had lean periods, he's pulled them back. And you said there that the actual the conjunction between him and Son. I think that Kane and Bruno Fernandes has kind of similarities there. Like Bruno will like running from those areas of the pitch that Son does, in the half space and finding the space, because Harry Kane attracts so much attention. And Harry Kane knows this. And Harry Kane is unselfish, quite happy to go and stand somewhere to open up a big space, something that Ronaldo never did. So you've got all of these things and these kind of key performance indicators that you really know that Ten Hag's looking for. So Kane is coming to the end of his time at Tottenham in terms of the contract. So where else could he go? I think the big club that I've said for a year with him, and he could go to, of course, is Newcastle United. I still believe that Newcastle can put the money up. They can trump United massively in terms of any contract, and they could also make Harry Kane their next Alan Shearer, because their fans are desperate for a player like Harry Kane, aren't they? A new godhead to come up there. I think Harry Kane quite like that. He'd get the Premier League goal scoring record there, no doubt. But I also think Man United might be more towards what he wants in terms of the glamour. Like looking at a club like United, because that takes you to the next level. You do it at Man United, you're a football legend forever, aren't you? You're not just the guy that was scored a lot of goals at Tottenham. So there is all of that on the table. It will play out in the press, and we'll talk about all of it as we hear more pieces. But I think Harry Kane is the ideal player for Ten Hag. But hey, if Harry Kane gets some injuries this year and looks a bit with an injury risk, it might happen, you never know. Then in the summer, we might be going, actually, it's Sesko. Sesko's had a good season. He's 19, 20. He's the next big thing. Go pay you 40 million and bring him into rotation. And you kind of build your project a little bit more slowly. Harry Kane makes you win now. And that's the other attraction of it, is that you bring him in next year, he takes you up a level, both for scoring goals and assisting.
The immediate response to that, I'm sure, Rob, will be Harry Kane's never won anything. He's not going to help you win now. I mean, it's such a blunt way to look at it, but Tottenham haven't won anything. Tottenham have won one trophy in 50 odd years, however long it's been.
Man United won nothing in 10 years, pretty much. You know what I mean? It's like, what are we, the Harry Kane equivalent? It doesn't work. Football doesn't work like that. It's about opportunity. So I don't subscribe at all to this whole he's a bottler thing. I've never seen anything like that, Harry Kane. All I've ever seen with him is that he's very self-disciplined, very self-motivated, very assured about what he's good at. And he does all those things. And he doesn't flirt with being selfish or flirt with the idea of, I've got to be bigger than the team. He's never been like that. So again, the other side I said on Twitter the other day was about the leadership issue, is that if Ten Hag wants more leaders, and again, this is a Weghorst, is a leader type guy in the dressing room. Harry Kane has also got that. He's a captain. He's done that. He's led teams. And even though he's a quiet leader, he certainly demands standards, doesn't he? We know that about him. When he talks, he says all the right things. So that's the fit I can see happening for Man United. And United do also want a marquee signing to sell the shirts. They do. They want those players as well. So that all fits together, doesn't it? He would sell a lot more shirts as England captain than Osimhen would. So there is all of that talk as well, commercial side of the business. We'll look at Harry Kane and they say that ticks a massive box for us if we've got new owners and we're looking for a new method.
How will Harry Kane sign for Man United though if they're wage capping. That's our final topic of today's show. I don't know if you've seen this, but there was a suggestion over the weekend that Man United will cap all new deals under a Ronaldo rule at £200,000 a week. Ronaldo was earning 2.5 times that during his time at the club. And United have Marcus Rashford to tie down to a new contract. They also have about 3, 4, 5 players who are earning nearly twice as much as that. So how did you react to this piece, Rob? And does it make any sense? Is it worth its salt?
No, I don't think it is. So we were chatting about this, weren't we? We did a little bit of investigating and kind of asked around and kind of asked the right people. It's a red top story. It's come through that Man United want to have a wage cap of 200 grand. I don't know any team in the modern game that does that at the top level has a wage cap. You could be more frugal, Scott, and you can like not waste money. Like that's wise, isn't it, for any team? Like don't just chuck a load of money at João Felix and then say to João Felix, well, you might play, you might not play. We haven't got an option on you. You're going to go home, at the end of the deal and all of this. Don't do that because that's stupid. But ultimately, you can't say to your top players and players you're going to attract that there is a cap, because in football, and I think this needs to change in soccer, in football globally, wage caps, I think, are actually a good thing. They're a good way to manage your business. It happens in other sports in America, and they do it successfully. And the sports like football globally that do not have wage caps hemorrhage tons of cash. It's a silly way of doing it. You should have a wage cap. But Man United are not going to just invent one. And I don't think new owners are going to come in and want to be attractive to the marketplace by saying, well, we're building a new team here, a new project, but 200 grand a week's your level. You're not getting 250 out of us. What do you mean, Sesko's agent? Like long term, he's only get 200. He's never going to get more than 201,000 pounds a week. It's stupid. It's not real. So this is kind of something that's come out of tabloids. We don't believe it is real. It's just someone putting 2 and 2 together and making 7. That happens a lot, doesn't it, in the industry? But overall, I think when we look at the ownership, and I kind of wanted to end this on the ownership, we haven't really talked about this off camera too much. But I sent something in our group text the other day about Lewis Hamilton and the potentials here of what's going on with the ownership issue. Now, we do believe that when it comes to the Glazers, obviously they're open to selling to anyone. They just want their money effectively, the best deal possible. That does look like Dubai as it stands. But the British side of it is obviously that we know that Jim Ratcliffe's interested in the football club. And Jim Ratcliffe has these incredible ties, really, obviously, with Mercedes, principal ownership there, and Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton has spoken recently and said that he would like to get into a football project with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Said it out loud. He said, I'd like to do it. Not being asked about Manchester United. He was asked about that and he went, no, I've not really been asked about that. But, it's something I would like to do if it was there. So I think that kind of the story, this ownership thing now is going to start unraveling a little bit more, and we'll hear more names because it's gone quiet, hasn't it? People are doing their due diligence, Scott, and people don't want to talk about how much money they're willing to put up for Man United. But I think this is the next step now. And wage caps and all that, no owner is going to start putting that into any offer and say, yeah, we're going to come to the club, but we want wage caps and all this. Not going to happen in football. Certainly not in the Premier League, which is all about commerce and capitalism. So I think the Lewis Hamilton thing's got legs. I think we'll hear a little bit more on that now in the next few weeks. And let's see what Jim Ratcliffe's move is, because I said on our show here months ago, put your money where your mouth is. Yeah, you talk a lot, Jim Ratcliffe, about putting money up and buying a big football club in England and buying Man United potentially. Put your money where your mouth is. Your opportunity is now. Put it on the table and buy the football club. Otherwise, go away. Say you're not doing it. And he's doing neither at the moment. So let's see where that goes, because I think that's the next bit of the story in terms of the Manchester United boardroom.
Yeah, we'll wrap up there. Let us know your thoughts and opinions. We went pretty strong on Harry Kane a little bit earlier, Rob. I'm sure that sentiment is not shared across the fan base.
Not globally.
Not globally.
I don't think. Again, footballers have different pockets of popularity, don't they? Like there's a whole big swathe of United fans abroad that have this idea that Man United have to sign English players, and that United, if this player's English, and they sign him. Harry Maguire's English. That's why they spent 80 million on him. Well, yes, that's why he was expensive. There is that part of the English tax, as I call it, when you're buying a top English player. But I don't think it works like that. I don't think new owners are going to come in and think, oh, yeah, we have to buy Harry Kane because he's English. I know there is that in the fan base. I think United will go for the best player for the system, and they'll back Ten Hag. But again, if it does a new owner come in, and do they want Ten Hag, or do they have their own guy? Like, that might be a stickler come the summer. We don't know, do we? Let's hope they stick with Ten Hag. I like him. I like what he's trying to build. Harry Kane, I think, is just the fit. Doesn't mean Harry Kane is the guy. And as I said, I think Newcastle could probably put a bigger offer towards him in terms of a wage deal and a long-term deal than maybe Man United were able to.
Let us know if you think Harry Kane is the right fit. Let us know if you would prefer Victor Osimhen. Talk to us about Weghorst in the comments and on Twitter @_Scott Saunders, @_Rob_B and @PrimaSandMU for the show. Subscribe, Apple, Google, Spotify, and the likes, and follow us on YouTube twice a week. Tuesdays and Fridays we'll drop shows. Like, subscribe, join the community, and as I said, leave a comment there for us. Rob, thanks very much for today's show. United play against Charlton in the League Cup on Tuesday night, and then play Manchester City in the Manchester Derby on Saturday. We'll be back to preview that game, I'm sure, and to talk about what's happened in the League Cup. Hopefully there's no embarrassing exit for United, but we're recording just a few hours ahead of that game. So fingers crossed everything goes okay. Let us know anything you'd like us to talk about in future shows as well, and really appreciate the love and support. Any final thoughts, Rob?
No, I just want to reiterate what you said there about comment. If you're watching the show and you watch the show every week, and we obviously take it, you probably subscribed in that time, just give us a comment on what you think. Yeah, go into in our YouTube comments, and obviously a lot of you guys kind of message us on Twitter, anyway, on our timelines, and talk about the show. Go in the comments now after this show if you liked what you've heard from us, and just give us your opinion, because we like to be able to go back over those comments and see what you guys feel, because this is what it's about, isn't it? This is a show for fans. You know, we're football fans as well. We love Manchester United, and we know you do. So jump in that comments, share, like, subscribe, etc., etc., etc. But ultimately, tell us your thoughts.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you later this week for another Promised Land.